Welcome in, everyone. This is Sean recording for MTG 808 Jr. Got a nice blue-white Boggles deck that we're sharing with you. Boggles is just kind of a term for back in the day. There was a 1-mana, 1/1 hexproof creature that was the crux of an archetype that you just stack a bunch of creature buffs on it and your opponent can't target it. So we're not playing any Boggles, but the spirit of the deck lives on in this archetype. So we're going to be taking a look at that today. Real excited to bring it to you. But before we do that, just want to mention our Patreon page. So for those of you that want to give back to the youth project, help support growing youth magic in Hawaii, potentially places outside of Hawaii onto the mainland where we're looking into branching out. But if you want to support us directly, go check out our Patreon page. Got lots of different tiers here for you. You can support at whatever amount that you want, and you'll get access to our Discord. You'll get access to our expenses every year, and if you want to give us feedback on what you would love to see in terms of cultivating the youth magic space, and have an opinion on where we should be devoting our resources and efforts, sign up for the Patreon, and we would love to hear from you in terms of what you would like to see. So our current patrons are Koji, James, Joe, and Corey. Thank you to you guys and all of our patrons over the years who have come and gone. Could not be doing what we're doing without you guys. All of the money goes towards supporting youth tournaments, especially our scholarship tournaments every year, and making all of this possible. So moving on, we got our sweet blue-white Auras deck that we're looking at today. Core of the deck here, we have a bunch of creature buffs that ideally we want to put on this hexproof creature. So 1 and a blue, or Cyber Cryptomancer is 1 and a blue for a 0/1 Moonfolk Ninja with Flash, and it has backup 1 and hexproof. Backup is an ability that says when it comes into play, you can put, in this case 1, because the backup is 1, you can put 1+1/+1 counter on any creature when it comes into play, including itself, and then until end of turn, that creature gains the abilities of whatever the backup creature was. So in this case, it's hexproof. So Cyber Cryptomancer, you can come in, your opponent's trying to kill something else, you flash it in, give something hexproof, and protect it, which is really important in this deck because we are planning on stacking auras on top of all of our creatures, and this just naturally has hexproof, so you can stack auras on top of this, and just start building your own Voltron, so to speak. So that's kind of like the most important creature in the deck. We also have, or that's the one that is most desirable to start stacking auras on. Gremlin Tamer here is another core piece of the deck. It is a white-blue for a 2/2 human scout, and it has the keyword Eerie. Eerie is just an ability that triggers anytime an enchantment enters the battlefield or you unlock a room. We're not playing any rooms, so it's just whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield for the sake of this deck. But it says Eerie, whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, create a 1/1 red gremlin creature token. So we're playing a ton of cheap auras. It's not uncommon to play maybe 2 or 3 auras on your 3rd or 4th turn, so you can get multiple gremlins a turn over the course of the game, which will help in terms of just like blocking your opponent's stuff while you're hitting them with a big creature, or just giving you more bodies down the road if you do end up needing to start stacking auras onto other creatures. Other big creature here, Inquisitive Glimmer. This one is an enchantment, so a white and a blue for a 2/3 enchantment creature, Fox Glimmer. So this one will trigger your Eerie triggers. And it says enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and unlock costs you pay cost 1 less. So unlock has to do with unlocking rooms. But this just makes everything in the deck cheaper. We have, we're playing 11 enchantments that will get their cost reduced. Will get their cost reduced by Inquisitive Glimmer, and it itself is an enchantment, so it just has synergy there. And then the other Eerie payoff that we have here is Optimistic Scavenger, 1 mana for a 1/1 Eerie. or 1 mana for 1/1 human scout. It has Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So a lot of our enchantments are already going to be buffing our creatures. This just means that we're going to get additional +1/+1 counters to start either spreading around so that we don't have just one creature that if it dies, we lose everything, or just if we do want to stack it tall on one creature, this allows us to do that. So those are kind of like the creatures in the deck and the Eerie payoffs, and then we just have a whole bunch of sweet enchantments in the deck. Probably the most powerful aura in the deck is Sheltered by Ghosts. So 1 and a white for an enchantment aura, enchant creature you control. When it enters, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Sheltered by Ghosts leaves the battlefield. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1, lifelink, and ward 2. So as long as this sticks, right, you do want to be careful, because if you play it on a creature and your opponent kills the creature in response, then you get nothing, right? But once this sticks, you get to exile their best permanent, non-land permanent, and you get to give this creature natural protection with ward, and it also gives lifelink. So if you are put it on a creature that's already big and you go to the races, right, it's going to be really hard for your opponent to race this. So, you know, ideally you want to put this on our Cryptomancer, which is the hexproof creature, which it means that they won't get this back unless they find a way to get around hexproof by like making you sacrifice it, or you know, Nowhere to Run allows hexproof creatures to be targeted. But this, it's very rare for your opponent to get the creature back after this, and this just gives you a ton of upside. You get their creature gone, +1/+0, lifelink, and ward. This is a crazy powerful card. Next best pump spell that we have here, Ethereal Armor. 1 white for an enchantment aura, enchant creature. An enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control and has first strike. So this sees itself, so it's always going to be at least +1/+1 and first strike. And then we have a ton of other enchantments in play. So, you know, if you have Sheltered by Ghosts and Ethereal Armor on even a 1/1 gremlin, then it's going to, Ethereal Armor is going to see at least one other enchantment, so it's going to be +2/+2. Sheltered by Ghosts is going to be +1/+0, so it's going to be a 4/3 creature with first strike, lifelink, and ward 2, right? So this, and that's just like with one other enchantment in play. So this thing will scale really quickly. First strike means that it's gonna like beat even Death Touch creatures in combat. As long as you're not getting blown out by a removal spell, this card is going to quickly take over the game. So common theme that you may have noticed, right? Like, hey, auras are great as long as you don't get blown out by a removal spell. Well, that's what we have. Cyber Cryptomancer can give something hexproof for a turn with the backup ability. This next card here, Shard Mage's Rescue. 1 white for an enchantment aura with flash. Enchant creature you control. As long as Shard Mage's Rescue entered this turn, enchanted creature has hexproof, so it gives hexproof for a turn, and then enchanted creature gets +1/+1. So it leaves behind the +1/+1, gives hexproof for a turn. It's super cheap. You can leave 1 white up and just make sure that your stuff is not getting blown out by removal spells. Similarly, Fey Flight, 1 blue, 1 colorless for an enchantment aura, flash, enchant creature. When it enters, enchanted creature gets hexproof until end of turn, and enchanted creature gets +1/+1 or +1/+0 and has flying. So we can give our creatures hexproof for a turn with this Shard Mage's Rescue or Cyber Cryptomancer, and then through Sheltered by Ghosts giving lifelink, Ethereal Armor giving first strike, this giving flying, you can make a very formidable threat very quickly. Last 2 cards here we have Combat Research. 1 blue for an enchantment creature, aura. When enchanted creature has, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. As long as it's legendary, it gets +1/+1 and has ward 1. We don't have any legendary creatures, so that part doesn't matter. But this is just the original card that was like this was Curiosity, right? Curiosity effect. When you are hitting them with your creatures, you're drawing cards, kind of refilling your hand. So this deck is very close to a version of this archetype that is in real standard, and you're not really losing that much They do have a little more staying power with some of the rare draw engines in the deck, but in terms of like the raw power, this deck gets to keep almost all of it. But since we are losing the draw engine from the standard version, that's why we're playing Combat Research, to kind of give the deck an opportunity to draw cards. And then last card we have here, Ossification, 1 and a white for an enchantment aura. Enchant basic land you control. When it enters, exile target creature or planeswalker and opponent controls until Ossification leaves the battlefield. So you can just a little bit more spot removal. It is an aura, so it will trigger Eerie. It will be checked by Ethereal Armor or count towards that buff. So it does have synergy with the deck. Cost reducted by Glimmer. So yeah, that is the deck in a nutshell. We are playing 23 lands. Could see going a little bit lower if you wanted to be ambitious. The deck's curve is really low, and Glimmer makes the whole deck's curve is 1 and 2 mana. And Glimmer makes some of the 2 mana spells into 1 mana spells. So if you wanted to shave a land, you can. Personally, I like being able to cast my spells. I hate getting mana screwed, so I'm inclined to play a little bit more, but I could see an argument being made to trim a land or 2. Looking at the sideboard, Elspeth Smite, I say it in every video, you need to have cheap interaction to be ready for the red deck. Elspeth's Smite does that. 1 white. Yeah, I'll read it. 1 white. Instant, deals 3 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. If that creature dies, you would exile it instead. Sided in against the red decks, any deck that's trying to attack you with 1 and 2 mana creatures. Soul Guide Lantern, I say it in every video, be ready for graveyard decks. Lots of recursion, lots of dedicated graveyard payoffs in the format, so just come ready for it. 1 colorless artifact. When it enters, exile target card from a graveyard, tap, sack, exile each opponent's graveyard, and if you want to cycle it, you can pay 1, tap it, and draw a card, and sack it to draw a card. So Combat Research in the board, if you are expecting the game to go a little bit longer, Combat Research gives you a little bit more draw engine. Exercise gives you a little bit more spot removal against larger creatures. Also gives you more ways to answer artifacts and enchantments. Sheltered by Ghost does notably say non-land permanent, so if they do have pesky artifacts or enchantments, Sheltered by Ghost can get it, but just having a little more redundancy in the sideboard for when you want it. And then some counter spells in the sideboard. Disdainful Stroke, 1 and a blue for an instant counter target spell with mana value 4 or greater. If you play against a deck that has a high curve, Disdainful Stroke is going to do great. And then negate, 1 and a blue for an instant counter target non-creature spell. So if they have expensive cards or key cards that are non-creatures, you can side and negate, and you'll be ready for them. So that's this deck. Very straightforward, but very high power. Like I said, this is almost the exact version of the standard deck, just with a little less staying power from the rare card draw cards that the standard deck plays. But the core of this deck is powerful enough to be competitive in standard, and you play 12 ways to give your creatures hexproof. So this deck's the normal way that this deck loses is by getting your 2-for-1 when they kill your creatures with auras, and you have lots of ways to protect it. So I guess I should mention that because of that, oftentimes you may want to wait to play your Sheltered by Ghosts until you also have a mana up to hold up Shard Mage's Rescue, or to hold up Fae Flight or Cyber Cryptomancer, right? Sheltered by Ghosts is such a huge swing in your favor that it's worth doing it a turn later to make sure that it happens if your opponent has untapped mana. So common play pattern, keep that in mind. I guess last thing I'll mention is we are playing the gain life land instead of the deal damage land. This deck has no problem putting with damage output once it gets going, but if you don't have the lifelink on your creature, it is possible to get raced. So just as long as you're not getting run over by a faster deck, I think that the life gain is a little more important in terms of making sure that you do what you want to do, rather than getting the last point of damage with a desert land. All right, so that's the deck. Let us know what you think. If you give it a spin in any of our youth tournaments or outside of that, let us know how it goes. Would love to get some feedback on the deck. And thank you for sticking around. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and catch you next time. Peace and chicken grease. Laters.